Welcome back to Tawana Talks, where I believe leadership is a dance everyone's invited to, even you with two left feet. Each week is a new track where we are chatting about the moves you make to lead yourself and others to success. So lace up those dancing shoes and let's dive into creating those supportive steps together. Ready to move with purpose? Let's hit the dance floor.
I am Tawana, and I am the founder and CEO of TL Collaborative Coaching and Consulting, where my mission, passion, and focus is on nurturing leaders for lasting success. I am really excited about having someone here today to talk to me about leadership and her experience in leadership and how she can lend some of her experience to those who are leading in different capacities and what her life can lend to that. And so here I have Dr. Yolonda Holmes, affectionately known as Dr. Yo. And she has been living here in Charlotte, Mecklenburg for 19 years, but her experience and her knowledge just extends itself. So I am going to read it for those that are watching because I do not want to miss anything. But then we're going to allow her to tell so much more about herself and share her story as well as her experience. But she's worked in Charlotte Mecklenburg School District serving over 20,000 families, working to close gaps within public education systems, my passion, and has over 30 years of experience in leadership, community advocacy, ministry, education, and criminal justice. And she has firsthand knowledge and experience in what is important of the issues that should be common in leaders today. And so, Dr. Yo, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. I want you to tell us a little bit about the areas that you've led and how they've lent themselves to preparing other leaders. And then I would ask you on why you even agreed to talk to me.
Let's answer the last question first.
Oh, okay.
I agreed to speak with you because I received an email from a dear colleague, friend of mine, and she read the description of your podcast and platform and said, Dr. Yo, I think this is you.
Oh, wow.
You fit this, and you should be a guest on the show to share more about your experiences, the areas that you work in, your current platform in being a public servant in the political space, and my journey. And so I read more about the information she sent to me, and I thought this would be great for many to hear and to understand and to be encouraged.
Yes.
Most importantly, by my story and my experiences, and then my journey as I continue to move towards what it is that God is continuously calling me to.
Continuously. I love that.
Continuously.
Just
yes.
like our first lady. I don't know who your first lady is, but my first lady is
Yes.
Michelle Obama, but
Absolutely.
that becoming. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that becoming, correct, regardless of where you've started. As we continue to move in this life, I've begun, yes. Began, okay, let's just say I started. Let's just get it there. Because I am from Charleston,
Okay.
and my Gullah Geechee will come out, and it is what it is.
It is what it
But
is. I'm from New York,
because
so
we're
that'll come out.
okay, because we're talking about our movement and our journey, I started to recognize and realize that once my mom unexpectedly passed away, that God had called me to a journey, and I need to fulfill everything that He has for me in this life, so that when I transition, I'm able to say or can believe that I have emptied out every gift, every area, every aspect of what it is that He's given unto me.
Wow.
To impact not only my children, but their children and others within this universe.
Wow. And I mean, I think for me, and hearing that helps me to just embody the vision of what I'm trying to do here, which is building a community of leaders. I think sometimes people don't think I'm not a leader because I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do this, and recognizing that you are. And so being able to have this platform of having other leaders and having a platform where people can see themselves in someone else and realize, oh, that speaks to me. I am a leader. Here's what I can do. Here's how I can show up to be able to leave that lasting legacy. And that's where that part of nurturing leaders for lasting success. And prior to us recording, we talked about the difference between surviving and thriving. And I think that definitely lends to that. And one thing that I mentioned was survival focuses on death because you're constantly running away from death. You're focused on not dying. And thriving focuses on life because you are focused on living. What do I do to live? And so I think that resonated in what you said on what are you going to do in life to make sure that you leave a lasting legacy, and that's living.
That's living.
Right.
That's living. When my mom passed, the thought and idea when you're going through that grieving and that grief and bereavement, you don't want to get up. You don't really feel like doing anything. And if you are not cognizant of the space that you're in, you can find yourself staying there for a very long time.
Right.
And I recognize that I need to continue to keep thriving, living, because God had given me so many different platforms as an assistant pastor, as an individual in the community who's advocated on so many different platforms, from sickle cell disease to being a bone marrow transplant, to donating your bone marrow, not transplant, but donating your bone marrow to be able to assist someone in the transplant procedures, and serving the community and being their voices, regardless if you're an introvert or an extrovert. We all have the capability of leading, but we should tap into that. And once we can tap into who we are and recognize that, then we can begin to move in that space of being a leader. And we don't need to become so involved with the idea that a leader has to encompass these 4 or 5 things.
Right.
Leaders come from so many different places and so many different spaces. And even, in biblical times, it wasn't just the strong male who was a leader. Women were leaders. Young children, David was a leader. So whatever gifts we have, utilizing that and continuing to grow in that space to thrive and show who we are, and not wait for someone else to come and do it, but we do it ourselves.
I love that. And when I hear that, it makes me think about, like, what type of environments are we creating that allow individuals to see their gift, and 2, operate in their gift. What type of environment? So you have an extensive background in working in the educational sector, working in criminal justice, now in office. We're working to get an office and things of that, and just all and I'm sure that's just the icing of the cake of the things that you've done in ministry, and the things that you've done in various capacities. What do you see? This is a kind of a 2-part question. In those capacities, if you had to culminate them, or if you were just thinking in your roles that you've been in and in different environments, what do you see were the things that provided that space for individuals to recognize and then operate in their gift? And what are the things that you saw that didn't allow for that?
So some of the things I began to recognize throughout this evolution process, becoming and allowing my light to shine, is that I had the gift of perseverance in knowing that some of the obstacles that were placed before me was preparing me for where God was taking me and where I needed to be. I faced many obstacles from racism, discrimination, not being paid at an equitable level, if you will, being a Black woman, any intersectionality that we commonly see when we think about who we are as the different leaders in our respective areas. As a Black woman, I faced that. Being a woman, and then being a Black woman, and then being in education, and then having a PhD, and then hearing the stories about what you can't do and what people won't do. That level of tenacity set me on the path to continue to persevere and move forward. And I appreciated that, because in the various levels, even in ministry, thank God that's not the level of thinking that my pastor has in his mindset. But there are those who believe that women should not be preaching.
Yep.
And so that was another level that I had to overcome. And recognizing that I'm an invaluable person, and I do have a gift. And what God has given me to say needs to be shared. And sometimes it has to come from a woman. And we have stories that align with how God used women. And in that space of ministry, being a female pastor or minister, and then in the space of education, recognizing that sometimes the women who serve in the roles in which I serve in, or just in general, black women in general, still, even though the system that I'm in is predominantly, I think it's 48% African Americans in the entire school district, if my memory serves me correctly with the statistics in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools, we're not moving to the upper echelon of leadership in that space. And it's often thought that, oh, we have one or two that is in that position. No, there are so many others that serve in various leadership capacities that aren't necessarily at the top of the chart, but they're in between. They're the silent leaders that serve our children every day and need to be compensated as such. And so all of those areas of strife, despair, inequity, and the intersectionalities of them all continue to push me further along to where I'm at, that I could couple all of those experiences to a higher level, which is now in the space of public servant as in a political space.
Yeah.
And now I can be able to touch and speak to various people who are dealing with situations in all of those areas in North Carolina for the betterment of North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I'm
be
proud
that
of
voice.
that. Yeah.
I love what you said with regards to having those silent leaders. And I think about that in the capacity of sometimes, like I said, you look at people and thinking about women, like, those type of things. I was listening to a book, and he was talking about, it's a minister, and he was talking about how his grandmother paved the way for him to preach, but she was a preacher, but she wasn't allowed to preach at the time of her time there. But you still had those silent leaders. And then I think about when I was in the classroom many years ago, and one of my students, who is now a social media mogul, she's been to places I didn't even know existed on the map. But she taught me how to even YouTube. YouTube wasn't even a thing for real when when I was in the classroom with her. And I remember recording my lessons, and I was like ahead of the pandemic, and it was like, I need these lessons to be able to get to you if you're not here, because I don't have enough time if you're absent. And so I was recording them and putting them like on Microsoft. And then she had this channel, and I was like, how do you do this? Can anybody see it? Now imagine that, asking that question. Then. And she was like, yeah. So she was a silent leader in my life. She taught me, and giving her that space to teach the teacher. Sometimes I think leaders get caught up in, I'm the leader, so you can't teach me anything. My 9-year-old daughter, well, let me plug, shameless plug. I do have a book coming out at the end of the year, and this story will be in there, so you'll hear it again. But I think sometimes leaders need to operate, or we should provide them with the space to be able to operate in the capacity of, I'm going to remove all of these barriers that people, and maybe society says that I can't do, and I'm going to be innovative in my leadership and say, here's this. So in that example, I say that to say sometimes having childlike faith and childlike mindset for leadership. My daughter, she was allergic to cheese. She couldn't have cheese. And she came home and she said, Mom, they said I need a note. She was 4 or 5. And I said, a note for what? She's like, so I can, for cheese. Like whenever they had tacos, I said, you take your lunch. I'll just pack you cheese. They said I need a note. Well, lo and behold, she in the back seat of the car. I'm like, what are you back there doing? Oh, she wrote a note. and it said she can have, it said, the exact words were, she can have cheese. That's what it said. But now I reflect on that. Remember I said in the beginning, I take these instances, I reflect on that. I said, her writing that note was not in any which way her being defiant to my leadership, being defiant to me as a parent. She wasn't being deceptive. She was like, they said I need a note. I could write a note. Here's a note. She didn't understand the rules or anything like that about, oh, I need to come from a parent. Here's the rules, here's the laws. She had none of that context. And yet, so she operated in her leadership of, I know what I need, I know how to get it, that's what I'm going to do. And so I say that to say, when you talk about the silent leadership of being able to, sometimes you have to silence
Yes.
the voices and all of the naysayers and all of the rules so that you can be able to operate in a space of leading innovation. I think about at one point, someone probably had this brilliant idea that we're going to be able to take this metal box and fly across the world. And somebody probably was like, you're crazy.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I thought about a story when you were sharing, and this recently happened in regards to the silent leaders. We often think that we have to have that title, and for me, I've never let the title define who I am and whose I am, because then you're only limiting yourself to that title,
Right.
and you would not dare to step out or step over or reach beyond because you believe you have to stay in
This
that
box.
in this box, and I do not like boxes at all, at all. And I served at schools early in the beginning of the year to help schools get parents, checked in, late
Yeah.
enrollment, things of that nature to support our schools. And while I was serving that particular morning, a parent walked up and she said, "Miss Holmes?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You don't remember me?" And I said, "I do, but tell me your name." And she told me her name, and we embraced, and then we started crying.
Oh.
And she said, "I just thought about you a few days ago. And I want to tell you that through that silent leadership that I was exhibiting during that time, not as a principal, not as an administrator, but as a teacher, as the one who was facilitating the in-school suspension program, in which I completely did a whole new level of what it should look like." And serving in that capacity. And she said, "You always encouraged me because I developed a procedure, I developed a new platform, lessons to be in that space when the students were there versus them just sitting there looking at me. We're going to get some things accomplished, and you're going to write out what you hope to be in 10 years, where you'd like to be in 10 years. And so she started saying, "You encouraged me so much, even when other teachers said that you're not going to make it based on my attitude." And I was so encouraged, and we embraced, and she continued to tell me her story, and we exchanged numbers. And for me, that was the direct result of my silent leadership and speaking into the lives of others, and in a role that I cared, and there was compassion, and that this person saw beyond this moment that I'm in right now, and knowing that I can make it, and I will make it. And to be able to receive that full circle and see her as a young mom right then encouraged me and said, "I'm doing exactly what I'm called to do." And I'm stepping, outside of what others want to be a box. I'm stepping outside of the narrative that you should just, that the dream is to just get a house, a car, a dog, have 2 children.
Right.
That's not it. I want so much more. I need my voice to be heard and to
Yeah.
resonate across so many platforms so individuals can hear who I am, what I stand on, and to know that I have a voice that's worthy of being heard.
Right. So what would be your advice to individuals who have that silent leadership spirit or have been pushed into the box of being silent, and so silent so silent to the effect that the leadership is even silent? It's just, you stay here in your area, stay in your lane. I've been told that before. Stay in your lane. Or we have to figure out what your lane is. What would be advice that you would give to individuals who, because I feel like too, people sometimes have a tugging and a pull that they don't really know what it is. And so if you're not in a environment where that tug and that pull can help you, then you sometimes think, "Oh, it's just me. That's just weird. I'm just feeling this way. Let me push that aside." And so what would be some advice that you give to that? I say that about the tugging and the pulling because people will feel that way. Like, I have something. But when you're in an environment, you'll be made to feel, no, you really don't have anything. So you think, oh, I probably don't. So what would be your advice to those silent leaders that don't even know that they're leaders?
Right. My advice to the silent leaders would be simply, at some point you're going to have to allow the outside factors to impact your decision, and you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to either cut some people out, let some things go, and allow your voice to be heard, because you weren't given the voice for it to be silent, but our actions as a silent leader definitely is needed. When I hear the stay in your lane, that bothers me greatly.
Hairs on the back
Because
of my neck
I
go up.
say all the time, how many times have you driven on the highway and you stayed in your lane to the entire time you reach your destination? There are going to be other outside factors of forces causing you to shift lanes.
Ooh, that's
and you
good.
have to shift your paradigm and shift where you're at and not allow negative factors to impact where it is that you're going and where you need to be. Because we are going somewhere.
Yeah. Ooh,
But
that's
you
powerful.
cannot do that staying in one lane. You're going to have to move to the left or to the right, or even oftentimes pull over on the side.
No, that's powerful, because you think about that.
Yes.
You got an accident, you ain't gonna be like, well, I'm just staying in my lane. I'm about to hit
Exactly.
this
So you
accident.
need to map out
Ooh, that's
whatever
good.
your Google voice is, map
yeah.
out your next direction and where it is you need to go to get there. And that means circumventing the accidents, the people, the naysayers, those who aren't for you and they're not in your camp, and be able to know that I have a spare tire. I have the equipment needed to go further, to help me to go on. And you're going to have to make those life-changing decisions
Yeah.
to be able to move forward, and knowing that your silent voice will eventually be heard. Because if at some point you move from being the background singer to being, the leader of the show, or the lead singer.
I love that analogy of, you don't ever stay in your lane when you're driving and in the car, whether people are going slow, accidents happen. Like you're gonna have to maneuver and circumvent to be able to get to your destination. That is a phenomenal analogy. I love that. And it brings me to the mindset of operating in the capacity of a victim or a victor.
Yes.
Right? And I think when you identify so it's kind of when you assess a situation and you understand what the situation is and the expectation, then you make a decision. Either I'm going to deal with it and not complain, or I'm going to make a change.
Yeah.
But in all aspects, can't be a victim. You got to be a victor, because that's what we were designed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And we saw that level of tenacity and fortitude in the 60s, and seemed like somewhere down the line we've kind of lost that, because people often would say, well, you can't. And then, many would say, oh no, we can, and I will not move from this seat on the bus. I refuse to not have equitable services and civil rights that I'm I should have.
Just the word in itself, right?
Exactly, right. And I'm not. And we've become so desensitized sometimes, and not everyone, so I don't want to use we loosely, have become so desensitized to the fact that, well, they said no, so that's what I have to do. No, that's not it. You have to be able to recognize that there is so much more, even farther than what we can think of. Like you mentioned, your children. My children are very, very in tune with what's happening, and I love it. I learn from them as well.
Yeah.
I sit down sometimes to be at their level, because they have so much to offer, and they do things so differently.
Yeah.
And I'll say, we need to let's sit down and do X, Y, Z. And they'll be like, Mom. I'm like, okay, let's do it this way. And I'm like, well, okay. So I've learned as a parent to even be flexible enough to listen to their voices, because they can help me move on to the next level. And they keep me vibrant, and they keep me young. They keep me in tune. They keep me with what's going on in technology and the various spaces that I'm growing in. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the diversity and equity and inclusion that I'm looking at when it comes to generations.
Yeah.
I love that we're dealing with it on a race aspect and a gender aspect. I would like to have more conversations with people and work in areas where we're dealing with it on a generational aspect. I mentioned in several of my posts and things of that nature of, this is the first time where all generations are in the same workspace, from the boomers to the alphas.
Yeah.
And we are doing a disparity by thinking it's one way or no way. So all of these generations have something to offer. And I laugh at the memes and things of that nature that we have. Like, if you're this generation, you do it this way. And I'm like, oh, I identify with that. Or they showed it, and oh, that's funny and good and well, but now let's not stop there. Let's have a conversation of what can the alpha teach the boomers and the boomers teach the alpha. And it just goes to the mindset of what you said with regards to that sometimes people get, like, they take that no and they're like, it's there. And sometimes you see that more profound in some generations, like this Generation Z and alpha, they don't take a no.
No.
They'll be like, you said what? Okay, well, that's your no. I'll go over here and get a yes. Matter of fact, I'll create my own yes.
Right. And I love that. They've learned to create their own space. And they've learned to use technology, utilize TikTok, use YouTube, and form their own channels. Instagram influencers and Facebook influencers. And who would have ever thought?
Who would have ever thought?
You know, just that technology alone, many have made a career out of that. And they're walking down red carpets. And, and starring in movies.
You have people from different generations that are like comedians that are like, they making it hard out here.
Yes.
Teach me how to do that because I need to compete with y'all.
Right. And how do we
I'm no longer doing stand-up. You're doing it in your house.
In your house, in your home. And I think that COVID, well, living in DC, working in the Department of Defense for years, we had already had the technology that exists now. We had what was VTC at the time, video teleconferencing, and we would video teleconference at different command centers where I was working. And we already had telework centers. We would, that was the plan that they were utilizing to decrease the amount of traffic flow going into the
because that's
DMV and a lot of traffic. So coming up the 95s.
And I'm sure that was a later generation that thought of that.
Right, that thought of that. And so coming here, I felt like I stepped back 20 years. And I heard Nina Simone say that. I was reading an article about her life and her being away, and then she came back to North Carolina, whatever area she was living at the time. She said, I felt like I stepped back into the 60s, I believe, or it was maybe in the 60s, she said the 40s. But nonetheless, she felt she'd stepped back in. I felt the same thing. I came here in 2005 and felt, you mean you don't have remote or video teleconferencing? So I believe
2006.
2006. And you mean you don't have sites where you can work from? In preparation for what was to come for the
later on in life, you got to be able to have some forward thinking knowledge.
Exactly, and having that. And then now when we think about traveling in Charlotte, now I'm like, where did all this traffic come from? Charlotte has increased, and I'm not sure if you're a Charlotte native. If you're
I've been here 18 years, but it has increased. It looks different.
It has increased, and it looks so different. And being able to be forward thinking individuals. How can we do that to shift where it is where we need to be? Is another great area that I love. I don't like remaining in this space, and COVID has taught us that. Even in our churches, when did you think churches would believe that they would ever be online? You have satellite locations. My church serves areas in Africa and Panama, and like when? Now we have gone outside of the brick and mortar, the four walls, and taken the gospel and the ministry in other places where some churches would have thought, oh, I could never be like this church or like that church or be a televangelist. And now they're actually operating in that space right now. You know,
I remember being in high school and taking a remote class with a teacher. It was a college course I was taking in high school, and he was teaching 4 different locations. It was the students that were in front of him, and then 3 other, and my school was one. And I remember the whole setup was, there was construction people that came in, their contractors, all the things was above me because I was a student. But I remember now as an adult going in, it was layers of seats like a theater, and you had the TVs, and we faxed our homework to him. And it would be like, our fax machine's not, no, it wasn't. Nobody did their homework. Our fax machine not working. But having that forward knowledge, and then when you come here and you're thinking, you know, just anywhere, but that just lends itself to the understanding that different generations have different things to offer, different people, whether it's generations, whatever, the way that you think. I think about our neurodivergent individuals who think on a different side of their brain and think things differently. Those spaces, just because you can't see it, doesn't mean it's not seen. So opening the space where you are empowering others to be able to build on that forward knowledge, to inspire a vision, to operate in resiliency based on their experience of life, helps to nurture environments for leaders for lasting success.
It does. It really does. And I love that on this campaign trail that I'm on, I'm learning from so many different people, from so many different walks of life, and that we have more in common than we do, you know, that's different. We're more alike. And that brings joy to my heart. Our stories are different, but the feelings and the emotions and just having to go through that is the same. And like I'm a voice for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I may not look like what you expect, but I've been in that space. I know what it's like to have this happen. I know what it's like with healthcare. I know what it's like with not having employment and needing, that equity in the pay for women. And the stories are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, whether on the north side of Charlotte, the east or the south, the stories are the same.
Yeah.
And it's just the level of fortitude that we have to push through. Some of us may have more barriers, some of us may not, but I never cast this net of what I think people are going through or what they're living in, and they must be doing very well off. And then they're dealing with circumstances, situations with their children or mental health. And that's one that touches everyone. When we spoke about some of the various advocacy work that we've done, I advocate for St. Jude. My daughter is in that community. And you always hear that cancer has no respect of person. Right. I worked with the Cancer Awareness. I served on that board as well. And I try to ensure my campaign team that when we're out here, we're looking beyond what we see and really wanting to touch the inner soul of individuals and families and bringing their voices to the platform and to the General Assembly, to the legislation, because we do have so much more in common.
Yeah.
And it's very inspiring to me.
And it just goes to giving people space to, when I say that, sometimes it's important, not even sometimes, I didn't want to use that word. It's important to give people space to communicate their need, and for several different aspects. And I think about that, it's like, when you give people space to communicate what their need is, one, it's giving space on both ends. If I'm communicating a need to you, you're giving me the space to communicate that need to you, but I'm also giving you the space to decide if you want to show up in that space or not. You can say, I'm not willing to do that, and that's your decision. And me being okay with that gives the space for that, understanding that everyone's not going to show up in all your spaces, and that may be fine. But also it lends itself to, if I'm communicating a need and you're giving me that space to do that, it may be, I understand what you mean. That's not really the need. That's not a problem. Here is it, and here's how I can show up for you there. And you're like, mind-boggling. I love it. Yeah. So again, the whole focus is nurturing leaders for lasting success. And so I would be remiss if we weren't nurturing you for your lasting success. So tell us some ways on how the community of listeners and how we can support you. What initiatives do you have going on right now? What are some things that you're doing so that audience that see themselves in you can be able to nurture that space?
Well, one of the areas that I really, really love and appreciate is serving families, serving the community, and needing that information on how I can do that. So I would love for individuals to reach out to me and share how I can serve you as a person, as a woman, in ministry. I've done various conferences to help meet that need, women's ministry, but in the space of education, empowering parents and families, and now grandparents, because the dynamics, what we thought or what we really knew a family looked like in the 60s or 70s has completely shifted. Families are different now.
I'm a grandma.
Oh, wow. A beautiful young grandmother. So it's shifted.
Yes.
It has shifted. And grandparents are now the primary caregivers.
That's for sure.
And so many different, expectations, but we never use the cookie cutter of every child is the same. So I want individuals to share with me how I can better serve them, what I can do to listen, helping me along this journey now that I am continuing in, by sharing what platforms I can come on to help others, because I will be positioned, my prayer is, in a space where I'm making decisions for all of North Carolina, not just the individuals who elect me to serve, but all of North Carolina. And that will continue. My community work and service will continue. So that's what I would most like to be able to hear. That feedback brings, so much encouragement and joy. And then seeing that what you've poured into, that you can see the results of with the young
That legacy.
student in that legacy. So that's what I love hearing. I love being able to come onto various platforms and speak and receive from the audience. I always want to come and give, but then yet also receive.
Yeah, no, I think that's powerful. That's part of building a relationship. So tell us how we can follow you, how we can contact you, what social media platforms, what's the contact information so that listeners will know, and it'll also go in the comments when this video posts.
Okay. I have my personal social media platform. I wouldn't advise that you follow me on that because I won't let you in.
Don't give it.
I do not know you. You will not get in. And the next thing you know, I have someone saying, "Did you send me a?" No, that wasn't me.
That wasn't me.
So I do give my platform for the public service space.
Okay.
So on all social media handles, I'll say for Facebook and Instagram, you can follow me at Y Holmes for FORNC, and then on my Twitter, which is a noun and X.
Twitter.
You can follow me at NC Yolonda, YOLONDA.
Gotcha.
The other platform is my website, Yolonda Holmes, 4 NC.com.
Okay.
And you can follow and also reach me there and submit any questions.
Awesome. Well, it certainly was a pleasure speaking with you. I have gained a wealth of knowledge from you, and just being able to operate in the space of leadership, of building leaders. I hope that those listening and watching could see themselves in something or hear something that would lend itself to nurturing their space. So thank you so much for this time. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you as well.
Thank you.